Hi, this is Angela McFarlane and you're stamping with AMAC. Today I'm going to show you how to make this never-ending card. It's also called an infinity card. Now I've decorated it just using designer series paper, but you're welcome to add as many decorations as you like to it. On the back I've just used these two scallop squares, and that's an area where you can write your greeting on. So it's called Never Ending because it just keeps going and going. Okay, so we start with a piece of 6" by 12" cardstock. I've seen some people cut this up and then score it, but I prefer to score it first and then cut it into sections. It's a lot more accurate. So what we want to do is along the 6" side, we will line it up at 1.5 inches and try to be really precise for these measurements, because it will make a difference. Make sure you don't use your cutting blade, use your scoring blade. Once that's scored, I will rotate that 180 degrees just to make sure it's even from both sides. So I'll go to 1.5 inches again and score down. Once you've got it scored, then we're going to cut this into 4 equal sections of 3 inches each. So once again, with these measurements, you want to be really precise. If you line it up on the line for your first cut, do the same for all of your other cuts, because you want all these pieces the same size. So we want 4 pieces of 3 inches wide, and they'll be 6 inches long. And it's super important that these are really precise, because it will help with the movement of your card when they're all stuck together. So make sure that they're all the same. And I think my end one, my paper was slightly longer in my card pack. I'll just remove that sliver. So you can see that they're all the same width there. This is really important. And then to start working on these, I want to put 2 of them vertically and 2 of them horizontally. And this is how we're going to layer these. Then I'll get my ruler and just a really fine tip pencil, and on the 2 bottom ones I'll mark at the 1.5 inch mark, and we'll do this and repeat it on both sides. And I suggest you use pencil because we can rub this out as we go along, and then it won't be visible on our project. Okay, so this is where we will put our tape. This is the only spot where we will put glue or tape, and I will show you how that will work in a second. Okay, so we don't want to go past the halfway line because we'll need that free for the movement. So I will just attach my tape. I want to go close to the line, but definitely not over the line. Now you can use double-sided tape or liquid glue for this, but if you're using liquid glue, really make sure that you don't go over that line. We want something with a pretty strong hold. So I've chosen to use tape this time. I have done them with glue as well. Make sure that your tape doesn't go over your score line either, because we really want to contain that in these 2 bottom squares and our 2 top squares. Okay, now that we've got all of our tape there, I would recommend removing the pencil lines. I have tried it removing them afterwards, but I found it was too difficult to do. So I really recommend rubbing out your pencil lines. Now how this is going to work is I'm going to butt these 2 up, and you want them lined up as perfectly as possible. You really want them in line. And then these will get attached over the top going in this direction. Okay, so what I'm going to do is remove my top piece of tape, and I want to line these 2 corners up, because I want that as in line as possible. So I'll just feel those edges before I still stick it down. So you want that really, really lined up well. And then we'll do the same with the bottom one. I'll just peel this tape off. I'll just turn it around. I'll actually butt these up so I can feel that they're touching. It's really important not to overlap them, and you want that lined up as straight as possible. So you want those corners lining up, because you don't want any overlap on this part whatsoever. Okay, when we've got that side done, then we'll repeat the process for the other side. And I find it the easiest to actually butt this up to this piece, and then I know there won't be any overlap. I'll sit it down and make sure that corner's lined up, and that's looking nice and flush. Then I can lift up this section here, peel off my tape, and sit that down as well. So when I have got that like that, you can see that my score lines are lining up and that my cut edges are butting up really nicely, and the same on the other side as well. I'll just burnish this down a little bit, because that was from my trimmer. It's left it a little bit burred. And then what we need to do is fold these back on themselves. So you can see we have these score lines here. So we want to fold that back onto that score line. When you have done it, just do it gently. Then we want to burnish that back. And we'll repeat the same on the other side. So you just want to open this panel out. It does feel a little bit stiff at the beginning, but just gently roll it back on itself, and then burnish that down nicely as well. So that's our first part of the card opened out. Then we want to do the same, repeat the process along this top edge as well. So we want to fold this section out, and you can just help it along a little bit, and then get your bone folder and burnish along the top there. And then the same on the other side. So we'll just grab this whole section and bend it back along those score lines. These are the score lines that I did at the very beginning before I cut these 4 pieces. So that's all burnished down nicely, and then you can start working your card. So you can see that the mechanism is starting to work now. So you just want to open it out a few times, make sure it's not catching anywhere. And then when I've got to that stage and I'm happy with the way it is opening, I want to have the solid panels at the back and at the front. So that'll be the opening of my card, that'll be the front of my card, and then that will be the back of my card. So we're at that stage. So it's up to you which one you want to use for the front and back. You can either start on that one or on that one. Okay, so then we'll move on to the next stage of the card. So that's the first bit that I'm going to start decorating. In fact, all of the big squares, we have 8 of these pieces of Night of Navy. We'll be popping all of those on there, and we will do that for the entire card. So I'll just speed up the process for the sake of this video, so you don't watch me gluing all of the pieces together. I will just center them onto my panel. As you finish one panel, you can move on to the next section, open it up and repeat the process. And we'll move on to the next one. And then move on to our last panel. I've chosen this last panel to be the one that the greeting will be written on. So after I've attached the Night of Navy, I will attach the greeting panel, which I'd cut out using the square scallop dies. So we have 2 of those, and I'll just use the liquid glue once again to attach those. It's up to you if you want to put these inside. I just wanted mine on the back of the card, so there's no rules for these. Okay, then we'll go back to the start. So then what we can do, we've got all of these long bits. There'll be 8 of those that we'll need to decorate, and we'll find that they will be on the back of the card and on the front of our card as well. So this will be the front. So I have 8 panels of Night of Navy, and then I have 8 slightly smaller ones of the matching designer series paper, and I've kept the same designer series paper for all of mine. So I will go ahead and glue all of these together, and then I'll stick them onto the card. So we'll just speed the video up for this section again as well. When we've finished gluing all of these, if your pattern is directional, keep that in mind. This is going to be the front of my card and it will be opening out this way. So I will choose which patterns I want going where. So I'll pop this one there. I might pop those two there. So then I can stick those onto the card. So the bits that take longest on this card are the cutting and gluing everything together. So I'll just use my liquid glue and I'll center those in to those panels. It's always handy to have a wet wipe close by, just in case you stick your finger in the glue, just like I did then. It's inevitable to get covered in glue when you're crafting. Okay, I do like using the liquid glue because you can move your pieces around and you've just got that little bit of wiggle room, that little bit of extra time before it actually sticks down. But it still is possible to get things on crooked. Okay, when I'm happy with that, I will take 2 of my pieces of Designer Series paper and I will cut them down to size. Okay, so these pieces of Designer Series paper will just get layered onto the Night of Navy layer. And you can see the card is starting to come together. Then we can open this out and move on to the next section where we find our pieces, the rectangular pieces where they'll fit. Pop them on like so. And then we just attach those. Just keep mindful, if your Designer Series paper is directional, make sure you have it going the way you would like it to go. So there we have the next section glued down. I'll just go back to the front of our card and I'll stick on my next layers, and then we'll stamp the greeting and the peony flower and attach those, and that will be the front of our card complete. If you would like to add extra decoration along these pieces, you can add as much as you like to it. So I'm using the medium-sized peony. I'll stamp that on my piece of paper, of cardstock. I've just re-inked my ink pad the other day as well, so it's certainly showing the difference. We'll use the smaller Very Vanilla square that fits in there perfectly for our greeting. Once again, the measurements are in your instructions. This is using a greeting from the Peony stamp set. And I'll come back, I'll just cut out this peony and I'll be back with you in a second. Okay, so I will attach my peony, which I've cut out. And my greeting using the liquid glue. It's up to you whether you want your flower up the top or down the bottom. I've chosen to place mine down the bottom. There's no rules. And then I'll just center my greeting inside of my Night of Navy scalloped piece. Then just to finish the front of that off, I will attach one of the lovely gems as well. So that is the front of the card complete. So then I will just move on through the entire card and add my other bits and pieces to it. I'll just find where I'm at. Okay. So that's the back. Okay. My next section that I open, I will pop my contrasting designer series paper on these bits. Sometimes when you start opening the card, it seems like there's more sides to it than you realize. But there's only really the 4 sides. That's why it's called the never-ending card, because it can just keep going and going. Okay, so that's those panels done. And this is a little bit deceiving because it looks like the rectangular one, but once you open those up, it is the square panels again. So I'll put the same designer series paper as I had on the front of the card. I'll just pop onto this one as well. So now we have all of our large panels and all of our rectangular panels completed, unless you want to add some more decorative pieces to those. So then all we need to do is stick the small pieces of designer series paper on the smallest Night of Navy squares. And I will speed up the video while I do all of that, and then we'll stick all of those on. Okay, so now when we have all of those glued together, we can go through the rest of the card and attach them where they need to go. So once again, I'm just using my liquid glue. As I said, it's entirely up to you if you want to add more decoration to these cards. You can add whatever you wish. I've seen some out there that have got lots of different things added to them. Okay, so now I've got all my bits and pieces glued on, and that is my completed card. I hope you've enjoyed that. Just remember, the sky's the limit when it comes to your decorating, and I'm sure whoever receives this card will have lots of fun with it as well, and they'll really enjoy it. So thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode. Happy stamping.